All right, Lynee, over to you.
All right, good afternoon. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to join today. And Brandon and I were laughing because I actually wrote him on Slack to be like, hey, do I have a moderator? So I guess there are some perks to knowing people and being able to reach them outside of ELCC. So thank you for joining today. This is ChatGPT SME. And so I am Lynee Sanute. And before you joined, I was able to take my work credentials off of off of my name because we do use Zoom a lot for our virtual trainings. But I just wanted to give you a little background on myself. I started in libraries. So I started as an instruction and reference librarian. So I worked a lot at university libraries. And then I realized I was doing a lot of what ended up being instructional design. So I went back to school and I transitioned to learning and development. So I spent the better part of probably 8 or so years at CU. So I started at the Anschutz Medical Campus, and then I moved to the downtown campus in Denver. And then we transitioned to the system level. And then I kind of jumped. I jumped to the corporate world and I did some work at Google as a contractor, working on their career certificates. And now I am at the National Contract Management Association, which is a nonprofit. Actually, it might be not for profit. It's always hard to kind of distinguish. I always forget, but I do a lot of work on kind of their learning and professional development. Those are for people working in acquisitions. It can be government or industry. So I work full time, and then I'm also a co-owner of an LLC, and I was able to stealthily get my business partner Lynee to join because I didn't know how many people would be here today in case there was a lot of actual talking versus chat, because it can be hard to kind of manage both of those at the same time. So on the side, I work on a project that is a standardized curriculum for onboarding direct care workers for the state of Colorado. And then I also work on soft skills training for a company called Bundle. And so that's just me in a nutshell. And I just wanted to add a disclaimer that anything I say here today are my own opinions. I'm not representing my company in any way, shape, or form. So wanted to share that. This session is, you probably saw the engagement level is lead. So it's not for me to talk the whole time. So I just, wanted to share that, and hopefully you know that too. And what that talking looks like, you can be with your mic or it can be in the chat. I do realize that what that looks like could be different for all of us. So the ground rules, again, use your chat or your mic. All of you, your perspective is valid and welcome here. We do not have to agree on generative AI and how we use it in education. So we don't want to interrupt, attack, or invalidate others. I want it to be a safe space where we can, kind of, again, if you want to say something that you wouldn't want to be recorded, just use the chat. It'll be fine. We don't want to make sweeping generalizations about certain groups within education or certain, generations, et cetera. And if you're ever in doubt, you can just use those, lean on those I statements. I think that's pretty safe. If you can't tell, I'm using Mentimeter because I feel like it's one of the easiest ways to get people to be using things. So if you haven't already joined, these are the instructions for joining. Thanks, Brandon. And it's one we do a lot of. I feel like a lot of the people I work with these days do struggle with technology pull wise. This one's been the easiest, I feel like, in getting people to onboard, whether it is kind of getting it into PowerPoint because they have an add-in. I just made this in the cloud, which was pretty nice. And I'm using the free one. Is anyone struggling to get in? Anyone in there? You can give me an emoji. Oh, cool. I see one thumbs up. So that's exciting.
Hey, Lynee, should I be seeing this slide or do you know what I should see when I'm in Mentimeter?
Right now, it might just say instructions.
Okay, perfect. That's what I see. Thank you.
Yeah, because you're in there. So if you're in there, here we are. Here's the first question. I just wanted to know, how would you describe your current use of generative AI? So if you're using ChatGPT, Gemini, which used to be called Bard, or even like your assistant on your phone. It's funny, my son is 3, and at dinner time, he'll be like, Alexa, play We're Going on a Bear Hunt. We do not have an Alexa. So it must be something he hears at daycare. Makes me laugh. In the chat, or if you want to unmute, are you using this? I would love to know, is this answer-based professional use or personal use, or is it a bit of both? Both. Professional, yeah. We have an intern right now, and we had a discussion, and she's like, actually, I used it to look up a recipe. I had it tell me how to make a traditional recipe the other day, and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. Oh, Brandon, pretty cool. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so it's a pretty good mix, and we're a small group, so hopefully, we'll get warmed up, we'll keep going. So where do you guys want to start? Because this is, again, that engagement level is lead. So I really do want us to go where you want to go. I have ideas for what we can talk about, but again, we can start wherever whoever's here, we get to lead the discussion. So we can get in our feelings. It could be obviously a safe vent session, or talking about the ramifications for using ChatGPT in some way or another as a SME in an educational context, whether that's higher ed or corporation, nonprofit, what we can't do, share tips, tricks, and best practices. Okay, there's 8 of us on here, so we need at least a tiebreaker right now. I don't want to be the tiebreaker. So there's at least one more person I know on this call that can do it.
You
I
might
believe
have
in
to be
you.
the tiebreaker.
I know, but there's 5. There's 5 that have answered. So there's at least 2 more people on this call. I believe in you that you can do it. Yes, if someone votes for feelings, you can definitely put me in my place. You can even put it in the chat if you wanted, or you could message me privately. That would be fine too. Anyone? Anyone? Okay, there's a lot of laughing about the feelings. I mean, you could even vote based on the GIF or GIF if you're more of a Sailor Moon versus a pun about cans. No one? Anyone? Okay. Okay, let's start here. Sharing tips, tricks, and best practices. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, whoever did it. So let's start. And I'm happy to start too. Share your use cases. What's working for you, for those of you who are using it. And if you have a favorite generative AI that you're using, I tend to use mostly, I do use the paid version of ChatGPT right now, primarily. So that's ChatGPT 4. It's what I use most of the time if I've been using it for design. And so I use it for a couple of reasons, and I'd love to hear whether you want to unmute or come in the chat. On a personal level, like day-to-day operations, I tend to be a pretty direct, for those who know me and work with me, I tend to be a pretty direct communicator. And so one thing I struggle with are the more flowery emails or communications. I feel as an instructional designer or learning design, something that we can struggle with is that influencing without direct authority. So a lot of times you have to be very strategic about your emails when you're trying to manage pushing on a deadline that someone has maybe missed, or resetting expectations. So sometimes I lean on it to, please help me write an an email that conveys urgency, but is still polite, right? To someone who I actually still need to get something from. Because the mental energy that it can take for me, that's something that could really be draining for me. So that's one way that I end up using it. But in terms of generating content, if there's something that's extremely technical that I might be struggling to comprehend, I could say, okay, please summarize this for me in a way that is readable for someone at this level, if that's the audience that I'm trying to market it for. Because sometimes I'm working with audiences that, ooh, they're really into accounting, but the people that I'm trying to distill this knowledge for are terrified of accounting and cost principles. And so I'm trying to kind of make that translation, but also get the design done at the same time. But I want to hear what you guys are doing. And I'm trying to look at the chat too. So I have 3 screens. I'm sure I'm in good company here with the multiple screen setup. AITutorPro.ca. Oh, okay. I love that. So being able to combine your interests with what you're learning, that's wonderful. Being able to contextualize what it is that you're teaching. Yes, I also like using it to repurpose, like the show instead of tell. Like create a scenario that talks about the halo effect at work that's realistic for someone who isn't a manager. Like that's going to be that creating that narrative storytelling, maybe if you just need a brain break, is going to contextualize it better than just, well, the halo effect is you really like someone being seen as perfect and wonderful, you know, and you like them so that you just see that everything that they do is wonderful, even though it's not, which is obviously not the correct definition of a halo effect, but getting the gist there.
I haven't used AI a ton at work so far, but I've just been sort of dipping my toes in the water with the free version of ChatGPT. And I'm actually not very clear on kind of what the different options are out there. So I think that's something that I'm hoping to get a better sense of, and even just seeing some of what other people are using it for so far is helping with that. But at the moment, I've been using it as a copy editor.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not maybe as refined as it could be, and maybe I could do a little bit better with my prompts, I often have to kind of go back in and copy edit again, which is fine. But I've liked that it's given me some new ideas and perspectives on how to organize things, and just kind of like when I don't have somebody else that I can talk to about what I'm working on, it provides like something different, something other than what my own head can do.
When you went from working on a team to you're kind of a team of one right now, right? In terms of instructional design. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm the only person educated in instructional design, and kind of with that more formal work experience. And my subject matter experts, I'm at a public library currently. I used to also be at University of Colorado. At the public library, we have lots of subject matter experts, but people's capacity is a little different, and their ability to kind of work on projects in a more concerted way tends to be pretty variable. So I often have to progress forward and rely on my own ability to do research. So,
And so for those that are also here, whether you come off mute or in the chat, are you a department of one? Do you have people you can talk to about what it is that you're designing, or your ideas, or even just in the case of a copy editor too, like, does this make sense? Because that can be a struggle, right? To be a department of one and not have someone to even in a timely manner ask, hey, does this work? Like, does this make sense? Brandon, I actually don't even know your team setup.
Yeah. So I was madly typing in chat about my stupid setup that I have, and um to go towards like what our setup is, we are a department of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're hiring a sixth, and our director is a stipended faculty member who oversees kind of our daily operations, but is very much in kind of an advisor role because that faculty member is the head of a department, supervises lots and lots of other people. So this is a very small portion of their time, and really what they do is make sure that what we're doing, the pursuits that we have, are kind of in the interest of faculty and addressing kind of the emerging trends and issues. We have two instructional designers, one instructional technologist, although I am one of the IDs and I am half and half designer and technologist. We have a faculty development coordinator who handles our faculty development, and we are hiring an accessibility specialist. So not a team of one, but definitely still a small team. And we have more work than we could ever imagine.
I mean, I think that's probably true for all of us, right? Like it just never ends. Um, and then there's like other projects that pop up too.
Oh, a side hustle. Yeah, I've got two of those right now.
Same.
Yeah.
And then I go, why did I do this to myself? Um,
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 can I share a little bit about my setup? I don't know
yes,
if
of course.
people care, but like my use case kind of revolves around this. And I run my own self-hosted version of Nextcloud, which can have built-in AI. And so I have both a text and image generator. It runs on the open source version of GPT-4 called Falcon. And there's a little assistant that you can do a variety of things like general text prompts, ask it to write in a particular context. So give it kind of the framework and boundaries, summarize provided text, generate a headline. Let's see, what else will it do? Reformulate things. It can transcribe, and it can also generate images. I have it set up to be able to generate images as well. And so it's useful just for that quick one-off kind of stuff, but it's also extremely useful for creating documents because it has a built-in document server as well. So I can go into a document, say, generate an outline for this, give me 3 pictures that do that, and just kind of move things around as I need. It's it's really cool, and I'm a home lab nerd, so
How is how is your experience with the pictures that are generated? And not just you, but anyone on the call. I've had mixed I've had mixed results with images that I get generated. And I have mixed feelings about it too, depending on like where the inputs are coming from. Um, just right there, the ethical implications. But sometimes like the images generated are a little bit creepy, like for lack of a better word. Um,
they're in that uncanny valley.
yeah, definitely. Or it's like I asked for like a very like Spartan graph, very minimal, like to show a concept, not to actually display data. Like what would an upward trend look like? And then it's like, why are you putting all of these weird gobbledygook symbols that maybe were numbers at some point, um, but are no longer numbers. So yeah, I'd love to hear about other people and their experiences for instructional images that they've generated. You know, typing, it takes time. So like versus a potato with a smiley face. Like that's adorable. But unless you're doing a course on creating memes, it's less valuable. Yes, the prompt is huge. And maybe that's part of it too. I'm not an artist in that sense. So we've seen a couple shares from Aspen. Are there other use cases that people have used AI for? Like what's working best for them? Also creating questions. That's been helpful for me too. I've had to be pretty specific though. I feel like there's, especially for GPT-4, it will take a lot of liberty if I'm not very specific in corralling my prompt, because it will add extra information. And I'll be like, oh no, definitely we don't need to add that. But that could be, at least a good starting point in terms of generating questions kind of quickly that I can start editing. Looking up at these, let's see, Tony, prompts for images are difficult. Yep. Right, like we don't have a graphic design person on staff, but we do have a Canva Pro account, so it ends up being kind of a trade-off. The Pro account has enough assets. They do have some AI. I haven't tested that yet, but they usually have enough in-house assets with the Pro account that it works well.
I had forgotten that I tried the AI in Canva before. I actually think I've been more successful there than with Adobe, which is sort of surprising when I think about it.
Well, we can also kind of talk about, I wanted to hear a little bit about this too. And, I don't know if you have it because it might be more about attitudes than actual policies, but like for those of you that remained on the call, do you have policies that kind of dictate or guide what you can or cannot do with AI at work? Or is it more of a overarching attitudes of what you're allowed to do? In my experience, it's kind of mixed. I feel like some of it's don't talk about it, right? Like as long as it's not hurting anything, don't talk about it. In certain things like emails, um, things like that. And that's not so much my current workplace, but in other places. And then also don't put our copyrighted material, like don't put that inside of GPT. I've been explicitly told that at my current position, and I understand. Um, but I'd love to hear from you all here on the call if you have anything guiding you.
Yeah, nothing, there's been, very little of our work would be influenced by AI at this point. I guess we'll see what the future holds for public libraries, but I think I'd probably get mixed responses from coworkers. So it is sort of like a feel people out a little bit. And librarians tend to be curious, so that's at least a point. See what happens. Common sense policy, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like people are trying to wrap their heads around it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of buy-in right now about how will it streamline and make certain job duties faster, right?
It sounds like Aspen has some more specifics potentially with I mean, how to use AI to carry out job
Oh,
duties. That's
Aspen's
interesting.
unmuted. Yeah, Aspen,
Oh.
you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, in regards to carrying it out with our job duties, we have guidelines that we're supposed to use our AIMS like login for it. We should inform our supervisors when we're using it and kind of what we're doing with it, that sort of thing.
I guess like that would make me question too, though. Like it also would depend on who your supervisor is, because some will be super forward, right, and like digitally literate, and then there will be some that are just like, well, I don't know how that works, so what can I do about it? Like, um, it's just like that whole spectrum of, I've reported to people as an instructional designer, like working in that context, who had no experience or training in instructional design, but because they were my supervisor, decided to start making instructional design decisions, like about courses and whatnot and how that looked. And it didn't always work out for the best in terms of practices, design, whatnot. So it can get into kind of a gray area there, kind of depending, I think. I know that there are very strict things for students, right? So learners using ChatGPT. I've been on a faculty meeting before. Yeah, Brandon, I saw the kind of lean back and the squint. So
Yeah. I'm kind of contemplative, so it takes me a minute, but things that I really like doing are using prompts as starting points, right? And so like one of the things that people like checklists, right? And instructional design, not really a checklist kind of field, but there are ways to kind of inch towards that. And so I was like, okay, well, like, hey, can you create an outline uh, of a 16-week course development that includes these different members and the duties and tasks which they might face? And shockingly, it did a decent job, but that's just kind of one very specific example of the use case that I like to use it for. We just had our first retreat a while back. My department, they've been around like 20 years and have never had a retreat. And so I didn't, but I could have been like, hey, put together a retreat schedule for us that includes these sessions, blah blah blah. Really kind of giving you a starting place is one of my favorite routes to use it. And the only other one that I've used it in is automation of a lot of the more mundane or administrative tasks that I go through, which is something I've been working on for years. But it's way easier when I can just tell ChatGPT or Copilot, like, do this in this platform, in this language, and I can test it, revise it, tell it didn't work, it gave me this error, and it'll try and fix it. I mean, you can even have it write Excel formulas, right? It's pretty flexible and reasonably reliable.
Right. I mean, I've even been, in positions to where I've been waiting and waiting and waiting on a SME to send me something. Like I'm ready to do my part of the work, but I don't have the content to do my part of the work. And this is where I've been like, hey, well, what about this? And it's not to step on their toes in any way, but it's really to drive that timeline forward, because it will get to the part where I'm the one stressed because I have all the deadlines, right? I have all the late timeline deliverables, but I can't get to those because I'm blocked by the content piece that I need. And sometimes people are really just struggling with the blank the blank slate in front of them, or they're just so busy that they just can't get it to you. But depending on who it is you're working with, I think they could be like, no, don't send me what I'm supposed to send you. It's a fine line.
It does sound, and it'd be interesting to know if anybody has a different perspective on this too, but kind of a common thread seems to be it's useful in kind of nudging things forward. If we're using it to help students kind of get to that next level with their questions and be a little bit more engaged so that they can move a bit further forward in their learning or fill some of those gaps and bridge to the next level of a project. Not really hearing anything that people are just fully replacing any current tasks with just straight up with AI. That revision part seems important.
No, I think, and I think that one of the biggest struggles is, again, trying to make anyone, but in this context, learning designers try and do too much with too little resources or too little time, right? And that's when you can see the lack of quality. So in a learning management system, and honestly, I haven't used Canvas in ages, so I don't know if there's some level of AI generation for questions in there, but I've seen it in ours where they can generate multiple choice answers based on some content. And the spectrum of quality for those question answers can be really poor. I have a neighbor who works for a small business association, and she called me laughing and she said, "Did you write this question? It says it's A, the choice is A, B, A and B, A or B, or A and B or A, or something like that." It was like something so completely outlandish. And I said, "Oh, I bet you AI wrote that question." And someone just accepted it because they were in a rush, or, they didn't even look at it. They just thought it would be a fine choice. And that's where, if we're getting a push maybe from the top or from someone who's not thinking about what the ramifications are, like, yes, oh, you need to have 10 quizzes built by the end of this week. Definitely going to have mistakes like that coming through if we have to rely on something that's not being spot checked. So
Two things that I would share on that front would be, to what Lynee said, I wonder, are we there yet? That's another question that I think is kind of important for consideration is, yeah, it's great to nudge things forward, as you said, Lynee, but are we to a point where it can completely replace something that we do? And the other portion that I would share is I wonder if the mistakes, right, the hallucinations as we've come to know them, if the mistakes made by AI in mass generation of I won't call them assessment questions, I refuse to, with multiple choice questions, if test question generation, are the mistakes in there under deadlines, like you said, 10 quizzes by Friday evening and it's Thursday at noon, are the mistakes made by AI comparable or within the bounds of acceptability to what a human might be able to do? Because if a human can only do 5 quizzes, you're missing the other 5, right? Or if the human does 10 and just busts through it, are the same type or count of mistakes, are they comparable or are they acceptable?
and Aspen's point is good. And there are still humans behind AI. Like when we use our cameras and they recognize things in a photo, like humans have trained the AI to do that, right? Like for Apple, they call them graders. You know, they have a way where they mark it up with boxes to train the AI on how to recognize things in those photos. And even in Gemini, like it says, oh, don't write anything that you're not okay with a human not seeing, because they're still going to see it. People will read it. Yeah. And it's funny because I think this came up in a discussion I had before. I still use please and thank you sometimes. And I joke that it's, you know, when the overlords take over, that they'll spare me. But it also probably is just ingrained from how I was raised. Um, and I know at least one person wanted to talk about their feelings. And these we can talk about it anyway, shape or form. But I also had some questions here in case it was quiet, because we have been quiet today. But, you know,
I'll
how,
admit, I'm the one who voted for our feelings, and it was
oh,
because I felt bad for the
Lynee has lots of feelings. So if none of you have feelings about using generative AI, I mean, I'll be honest, the first time when I started using it and thinking about it, there was a part of me that just had that icky feeling, like, ugh, like, am I really doing this? Like, is this right? Um, but then at the same time, I thought, gosh, imagine if I had this when I was in my master's program, because I could have just focused on designing things for my portfolio versus trying to figure out what the heck I was trying to learn to design it to make sure it made sense. And even I was thinking, oh gosh, how fun would it be to design something with the wrong information, to be like, hey, can I convince you that with an engaging design approach, with the correct, like with best practice instructional design, learning design principles, I could still use incorrect information. Like, it's kind of a fun and terrible idea, but like I could do something about learning styles. Like, let me teach you how to drive by only reading. Like, but teach you how to drive in somewhere that's like a terrible place to learn how to drive, but by only reading. Something like that. It would be a fun exercise for me, and possible by getting, you know, all the wrong information from an AI. But I also don't want to train the AI to give other people the wrong information about driving. Um, Sorry, that was a very interesting tangent for myself. Um, but anyways, feelings. I shared mine, feeling a little icky. Um, it is true, yes. Yeah, ignoring it is probably not going to help. I wish it would do my laundry or clean my house, but as we did say, we're not there yet.
I mean, you may be talking about the next generation of iRobot vacuums,
Possibly.
although, you know, with text generation, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely not an educational application unless it's for the my personal domestic education. Um,
Instead of the little beeps and boops, we could have it read us Shakespeare, you know?
I mean, it's sort of interesting thinking of the AI as a learner also, because like we don't connect to it that way, I don't think, at least probably not most of us, but that's what it's trying to do in sort of its prime form, right? It's trying to be a learner. Does anybody
yeah,
feel responsibility for that part of it in terms of teaching it well?
I mean, I admit I was using Gemini the other day because Gemini does, I think, a little bit better job going out. I was using it to generate APA citations, even though I know there are other citation generators, but it goes out, it can go out to the web and grab the info. And I was working with someone else's information they had given me. And I could see it generating the citation, and it had already generated one from a different link. And then it abandoned it halfway through generating it and said, I'm still learning. I can't do this yet. And I just was like, excuse me, you just did it. And then it said, I'm sorry, here's the citation. And I was just like, this is absolutely bizarre. So it made me reflect too on like, is this making me lazier and more impatient? Is it? That's something for me to kind of process internally. And as someone who used to teach students how to do APA citations, like I know how to do it. It was just faster to ask Gemini to do it for me. I don't know that it actually, yeah, I don't know that it actually makes me lazier though from the design standpoint. It's just freeing up my time to spend more of my brain power on the things that actually need brain power. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's been a common theme throughout, is that none of us are feeling like we're at the point where we can just delegate it out and be done.
Like, I think my example from the beginning, if you were here, like sometimes writing that flowery email to where I'm trying to get something but not offend someone because I don't know them, like that could take me a long time because I'm like hemming and hawing over, oh, I need this, and like I need to be direct, but at the same time, like I have literally zero power over this person. How do I get this done? That could take me a long time. Whereas I could feel energized and rewarded by designing something massive, like a whole certificate course. And I would still be able to do all my other things for the day. Even if it took the same amount of time, like my mental strength wouldn't be drained because, okay, I'm gonna look at Goblin Tools and try not to rewatch the K-drama called Goblin. Sorry, just had to plug a K-drama. But definitely, it's.
I mean, for me, it's sometimes filled in the gaps when I would be forced to be lazy, because if I can't work on things while I'm waiting for people, I have nothing to do. So, there we go. It can keep the work moving. That's what I'm going with, Tony. Tell your boss I said so.
And if you're ever in a brain fog, it also can help. Like like, have you ever had a brain fog and you're just like, I'm struggling right now. Why can't I think of this? And sometimes it's just that kick. Like, oh right, I do know what I'm doing. I am excellent at my job. I just needed someone else to say something, and it got the wheels of my brain turning again. Now we have like 3 minutes left. So other than the tools, which are there, is there anything else that we want to reflect on or think about? And we can blame not Brandon, we can just blame ChatGPT for not starting on time. That's why. That's what Lynee and I were texting about before. That's why we didn't start on time.
I was having a conversation with ChatGPT, so I apologize.
And then it gave you the wrong time, and you were like,
It did. It was like, yeah, this session is supposed to start at 1:03, and you shouldn't get there until 2 minutes beforehand, or after,
And this is what happens when you don't double check the facts, Brandon. Thank you.
you got to verify. I did not. I just believed it. I let it run my calendar. It can't do that.
Well, it's also too much with not enough time. But thank you for joining today. I mean, I really appreciate your input, and I think, let's see, Goblin, there were a couple in here. I think it will actually generate the chat for me. Yeah, it's, I just saved it too. So, so I have those tools saved to explore. So that's super exciting. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'm literally the only Lynee Sanute in the entire world. So it should be pretty easy to find me. But otherwise, I hope you have a great week. And thanks for coming today.
Thank you,
And I
Lynee.
sounded, yeah, and I sounded like a Valley girl at the end, but I'm okay with that. So, and thank you, Brandon and Lynee, for coming off camera and showing your beautiful faces.